So I've had the iPhone SE 2020 for around 3 months, and I want to share with you my experience with it, kind of like where it stands right now as the iPhone 12s are about to come out, and if it's something that you might want to consider in this video. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. iPhone SE 2020. I'm going to begin with the build. Now, I got to say, after a few months, of course, it's an Apple product. It does feel premium, but there's nothing shocking about this one. It never felt like super interesting because it looks like an iPhone 8. It looks like an iPhone 6. And to be quite honest, the original iPhone SE to me was a more unique device for the time, as Apple was going into the iPhone 6 and getting rid of that 4-inch design, so it felt a little bit special. Now they are getting rid of this one, but this one was around for so long, it just never felt too special. That's the most I could say about it in terms of like its design. Now they did bring the Apple logo down, which I think looks super clean. The single camera looks super clean here on the SE. So overall, it's still a nice looking phone, don't get me wrong, but it's just nothing really special. It looks like the iPhone 6, iPhone 7, iPhone 6S, iPhone 8 Plus, iPhone 8. It looks like all of those. So big bezels on the front. We do have the Touch ID, which surprisingly has become super useful during this, very shocking times we're going through right now. Touch ID is super useful compared to Face ID, where it basically fails every time with a mask on. So Touch ID's been pretty nice, gotta say that. But, honestly, when not comparing it next to the iPhone 11 Pro or the Pro Max, these bezels, this design, being older doesn't really bother me. I really just love how fast this phone is, how small it is compared to the rest. Just a beautiful experience to use the Apple iPhone SE 2020. I am running the public beta 3 as of the recording of this video as well. Now, while it's not the most, beautiful device ever made by Apple, it's definitely a very light device right here. So 148 grams, you barely feel this thing in your pocket. There's been multiple times in the past several months where I don't even know I have my phone on me. I'm getting nervous. Like, did I lose the SE? Where did my phone go? OMG, and then I check and it's in my pocket. It's just so light I can barely tell it's there. So the SE definitely has that super light factor, especially compared to like the iPhone 10, the 10s, as well as the 11 Pro. This thing just doesn't weigh much, and we're a little bit close on this camera angle, but this is a small phone, especially if you compare it to basically most phones in the industry. As a matter of fact, when the iPhone 12 5.4 comes around, it's going to be probably a little smaller than this. Hopefully more manufacturers copy what Apple is doing and bringing a couple small options to their phones, as everyone seems to be going to these massive devices. Thumbs up if you agree with that one. Now I want to brush more on Touch ID. Now at first, if you're used to using a new phone with Face ID, like if you came down to this, bought this as a side phone or something, Touch ID just feels kind of antiquated. It feels a little bit old compared to Face ID if you've used it. If you haven't, you're going to be totally used to this. It never really was a problem unlocking like this. It's very accurate and fast. Again, with the pandemic going on, the mask and Face ID is super annoying. So the Touch ID here was the perfect timing to launch this phone right here. And I don't think that was planned, that there was going to be a pandemic. Apple was already planning this before time, and definitely very useful right now. In terms of speed, it really doesn't feel any faster than it did on the iPhone 8. So I'm very happy with the Touch ID scanner. Hey guys, so when it comes to display, what is the quality like here after 3 months? And honestly, I do notice the sharpness of the text, not quite as sharp as 11 Pro, for example, or iPhone 10s, 10s Max, even the Plus model. I wish we would have seen an SE Plus to give us that 1080p option, as this one doesn't reach that level. However, it's not a bad display. It's the Retina display we're used to, 625 nits or so, plenty bright, definitely has True Tone, dark mode, all the goodness here that you expect from your display with Apple, night shift mode, all that stuff. So there's nothing cheap about this display. It actually feels quite premium. Of course, it's super smooth. Even though it's a 60 hertz, it still runs very smooth, and you do have the ability to press in on that haptic press. Again, that's a little slower than the Touch ID on 6S, 7, and 8, but I did notice that felt like a little bit of a step back, a little bit of a cheaper feel to me than 3D Touch, but still, the display itself is okay. Also, when watching a video, This is where the SE suffers a little bit. It's a little bit small. You will start to crave your tablet or something larger, especially if you're going to be watching videos hours on end. It does feel a little bit small, and for gaming it does feel a little bit small as well. But at the same time, in terms of the trade-off that you get, like the super lightweight, the portability of this, using this thing one hand and scrolling through websites and going ahead and just basically doing everything with one thumb and one hand, I think it's worth that trade-off when you just have a little bit of a smaller video clip here. And while we're talking about video, you hear that audio? Your auto restarts as well, for pretty loud for this phone at $399. Let's go ahead now and see how much dual speakers. At this price point, a lot of phones sound whack compared to this device right here. So this has some great audio externally, but you do have to sacrifice the fact that most phones in this price range, a lot of competing phones do have headphone jacks because a lot of those manufacturers realize some people still want to use a headphone jack. This one doesn't have it. So you do get better speakers though. So do keep that in mind. And you do have very fast Bluetooth connections on this one with Bluetooth 5.0. So yeah, display overall, I'm not disappointed. You can also do the zoom mode, which I'm in right now. If I go to display right here and I go back out to standard mode, the icons will get a little bit smaller. So I always like that about this phone. For people who have a little bit problems with vision, maybe they want to make those icons bigger. You can do that here for this phone. And speaking of the software with the iPhone SE, well, I'm running the beta right here. You can see I do have widget support on this phone, pretty sweet. And it runs okay. It really does for this device. And the clock widget's available for iOS 14 public beta 3 right here. They don't all work perfectly. There are some issues, but it's nice that you're at least starting to see some of more features that they showed off in the preview images on the website making their way, like the clock widget right here. A lot of people say, well, it's just like Android. No, it still retains the core iOS features. They're just kind of adding an app library as well as the ability to add some of these widgets to your home screen. Android goes way deeper than this does. But at the same time, the software on this phone, it just feels so refined. It feels great for a one-handed device. And of course, you know it works well with all your Apple devices. So 3 months later, this is an amazing small device here in terms of software. And that brings me on to the performance. I quit doing speed tests. We were doing a lot of speed tests on here because I think I proved my point that the SE is a boss performer. It could even beat phones like the Galaxy S20 Ultra, which costs $1,000 more than this phone. So don't sleep on this device right here. This one is not playing around when it comes to the speed. You're going to get blazing fast speeds. And even though this doesn't have the largest amount of RAM, you'll still get pretty decent multitasking. Sometimes things will reload if you have too many things open because it just doesn't have enough RAM. So that's an area where some Android phones will still beat out the SE, but still, this thing is a champ. I really have had no lag on it. Okay, so let's talk about the camera. A single lens, let's put it this way. This is like the iPhone 11 series just with a single camera. It's basically the same experience, and that is amazing because you have the same features where you could change a 16:9, you could change your exposure right here, looking very similar to what you get on the Pro model. So let's put it this way. This is like a single camera Pro model right here because the camera is that good. And when it comes to the selfie camera, the iPhone SE 2020 just cannot compete with the iPhone 11 or the iPhone 11 Pro, but it's still an iPhone camera. What I mean by that, it still produces good results with hardly any effort. So I don't think you're going to be super let down by worse quality on here because it still produces pretty decent, acceptable quality for a selfie photo. So yeah, I like the camera on the SE, but I do have to say that I do miss the wide angle. I do miss the zoom in. And I think if you care a lot about, you know, if you're a shutterbug and you want to use the most you can get out of your camera, you're probably going to want some of those extra lenses that most other phones offer. And so let's talk about the battery life. And I'm not going to lie, I've been a little bit disappointed with the battery life here compared to some other iPhones. But as it stands as its own, you know, for the price, it still can get through the day. But there's nothing impressive about this phone. It feels typical iPhone. You know, you can go most of your day, might have to charge around 8 o'clock at night, somewhere around there. You might be getting a little bit nervous if you're using it too much. Might have to charge in the middle of the day if you're going hard on this phone. So this is no battery beast here in this particular SE. But I think for what it gives you, like 1800 or so milliamp hours, it performs a lot better than that number would indicate. So for my on-screen time numbers, I do get around 4 to 5 on this phone. So what has the phone call quality been like? How has the phone been as a phone? And I gotta tell you, it's actually been great. It's been better than the 7 and the 8. Also, definitely better than what I seen on the iPhone 11. So this has excellent phone call quality, not the loudest speakers I've ever heard on a phone, but I haven't had no drop calls. Calls have been A1 for this one. So pretty good. So at the end of the day, I think the SE came at a perfect time. Right now, phones are not something on everybody's mind buying right now, but if they are, at least you have a cheaper option on the Apple side, and this one is going to remain there. Now, even when the iPhone 12 comes out and it does have a 5.4-inch display, you're not going to see prices as low as the iPhone SE when those phones come out. So this one still will have a place for people who want a budget beast iPhone. And yes, you do have to live with the fact that you have an older design. This design is not going to be around much longer, but you don't have to live with the fact that you're not going to have software support, because you will for many years. Look at we're running the latest version of iOS 14 public beta 3 right here on the SE already, and it's going to stay this way for years with that amazing chipset under the hood. So let me know your thoughts on the SE. It's been out for a few months, and if you bought one, you probably have been loving it or disliking it. And for me, it's been a pretty great phone. So thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next episode. Stay safe, stay well, and peace.